your movie is really funny. It's really funny. By myself, laughing out loud hysterically today.
It is one of the most important contributions to cinema in American history.
Your goal is to conduct an investigation into something key to the culture war.
There were so many great moments in there.
Were these people real that are in this movie?
It's a great film.
I highly recommend everybody go see this movie.
Mazel tov, as
thanks.
Ben's people would say.
Am I Racist? Rated PG-13 in theaters now.
There was so much news this week, I feel I should begin the show by just giving you the headlines as reported by the elite news media. This week's top story comes from the New York Times, a former newspaper, with the headline, Donald Trump nearly gets himself assassinated again. Quote, Donald Trump's rhetoric continued to inflame violence as an alleged gunman was alleged to have allegedly tried to allegedly assassinate this fascist threat to democracy for the alleged second time in 8 alleged weeks. Experts on political violence agree that for his own safety, Trump must be exterminated before his rhetoric gets him killed. Acting head of the Secret Service Ronald Rowe Jr. admitted his agents erred in not scouting out the alleged spot on the alleged golf course where the alleged gunman allegedly waited for 12 alleged hours with an alleged AK-47. But Rowe said the spot was often used by paparazzi because of its excellent line of sight on Trump, and the service's commitment to freedom of the press made them reluctant to disturb anyone with a long-distance scope who might just be a photographer with an AK-47. Rowe, who was made acting head of the service after he arranged security for Trump at Butler, Pennsylvania, has now been promoted to Lord High Master of all safety for Republican candidates everywhere, unquote. In another top story, The Washington Post presented an analysis of Hezbollah's exploding pagers, headlined, Has the Jewish Sense of Humor Gone Too Far? Quote, across Lebanon this week, Hezbollah terrorist leaders were heard to say, I've got to go, my pager is blowing up. Then they did, and they did. American Middle East experts have become concerned that if Israel continues to recklessly kill Iranian proxy terrorists, there'll be no one left to chant death to America except the Democrat Party. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu attempted to deny his country's involvement in the incident, but could only gasp out the word pagers over and over again while giggling helplessly. Searching for a silver lining to having their terrorist pagers explode while hooked to the front of their belts, Hezbollah has announced that the survivors of the attack will be forming the new falsetto section of the Iranian formerly boys' choir. Those who did not survive will spend eternity surrounded by 72 virgins while having no testicles, also known as going to hell, unquote. Yet another story from CNN Online is headlined, What Diddy Did or Did He? Quote, rapper Diddy was arrested this week after a white FBI agent Googled running a train and found out it was synonymous with gang. Diddy did say he didn't, but was imprisoned without bail after the judge heard Diddy did a rap song saying, we date him like we hate him, treat him like we beat him, turn a freak to a bisexual, and if she's flexible, have her screw the player next to you, which turned out to be exactly what he was charged with in the indictment, unquote. Now, even on a busy week like this, the elite media did not spend all its time covering hard news. For instance, on NBC's Today Show, anchorwoman Savannah Guthrie used her cooking segment to strike back against anti-migrant sentiment by offering an excellent Haitian recipe for house cats garnished with the stolen souls of your enemies. Ms. Guthrie said, quote, the federal government has found absolutely no cat eating among the 20,000 Haitian migrants dumped on the 60,000 people of Springfield, Ohio by the federal government. But just in case, here's a tasty Haitian treat that will help you do that voodoo they do so well, unquote. ABC's Good Morning America ran a segment called Colorful Customs from Around the Globe, in which George Stephanopoulos interviewed a Haitian migrant from Springfield on how to silence inconvenient witnesses. After George shared his techniques, the migrant demonstrated how to stick pins in a doll. Though some viewers protested the doll looked suspiciously like Donald Trump, Stephanopoulos explained the doll was simply meant to represent all political evildoers. The migrant then stuck pins in the doll, and Stephanopoulos ran out of the studio screaming in agony. So those are this week's headlines from the elite media. Now the news. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, We are back laughing our way through the fall of the Republic. I have some announcements, important announcements. A Woman Underground, which is published October 15th, but you can pre-order it now. I hope you will pre-order it now. Help it get on the bestseller list, which will keep the series alive. This is number 4 in the series. Number 5 is already coming into the pike soon, but I'd like to keep it going beyond that. You can just see I got the first books, the first real books, as opposed to the advanced reading copies. Also, the audiobook is now available to pre-order. If you prefer audiobooks, you can now get that on Audible or wherever you get your audiobooks. I am also doing 2 appearances at bookstores, one with my son Spencer Klavan, no relation. His new book, The Light of the Mind, Light of the World, is being published after much bouncing around. It's actually being published on exactly the same day as my book. And so we're both going to appear at the terrific Landmark Bookstore in Franklin, Tennessee, near Nashville. This is on October 17th at 6 p.m. It's a great bookstore. It's a wonderful bookstore, 114 East Main Street in Franklin. We will be there at 6 p.m. October 17th. If you'd like to come by and hear us chat with one another and also get a book signed, we would love to see you. Then for my New York pals, Monday on October 21st, so the Monday right after that Thursday, I'll be at my home bookstore, The Mysterious Bookshop in New York City at 6 p.m. That's downtown at 58 Warren Street. We did this last year, had a great crowd. It was really fun, and I hope you'll come and do it again with us this year. So that is the 17th at 6 p.m. at the Landmark Bookstore in Franklin, and the October 21st on Monday at the Mysterious Bookshop in New York City. If you are listening on wherever you're listening, DailyWire Plus or YouTube, leave a comment. And if that comment is absolutely morally repulsive, we will read it on the air because it just fits in with all our other content. Today's comment is from Colleen, 2864. She says, as a woman, I really wanted to be offended by your constant commentary on women who have men being more logical, but then I remembered that I have a man. See, I'm telling you, it's just the way it works. All right, let's get to today's episode, Every Man a Donald. So Donald Trump, as we all know, exaggerates, and he talks inexactly. And sometimes he gets tangled up in some silly conspiracy story he heard on television or read in some tabloid, and he follows that down a rabbit hole. But I don't actually think the left hates him for any of those things. I think they hate him for the things he says that are absolutely 100% true. Dave Chappelle got this exactly right about him. Here's a brief clip. This is excerpted for length.
That first debate, I'd never seen anything like it. I've never seen a white male billionaire screaming at the top of his lungs, "This whole system is rigged," he said. And across the stage was a white woman, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, sitting over there looking at him like, "No, it's not." I said, "Now, wait a minute, bro. It's what he said." He said, "I know the system is rigged because I use it." I said, "Damn." And then Hillary Clinton tried to punch him in the taxes. She said, "This man doesn't pay his taxes." He shot right back. "That makes me smart." And then he said, "If you want me to pay my taxes, then change the tax code. But I know you won't, because your friends and your donors enjoy the same tax breaks that I do."
So what Chappelle was telling you there was that Trump was saying what the people without power suspect but can't prove because they aren't part of the system. But Trump is part of the system because he's a wealthy guy and he was being a class traitor. And that's what makes people hate him. Now, listen, I'm the sort of I don't feel that we owe Trump for that or for anything else. I don't feel we owe any of our politicians anything. I don't feel we owe them respect. I don't feel we owe them loyalty. I don't think we owe them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think we owe them anything. They work for us, Trump included. But now, as Trump continues to campaign fearlessly after a second attempt on his life, and as a new RMG research poll shows that 28% of Democrats think America would be better off with Trump dead, and another 24% are unsure, so that's 52, that means 48% of Democrats can say they don't want Trump dead. I feel we actually do have a moral obligation to join Trump in doing the thing that the left hates, which is speaking the truth bluntly, no matter the the cost to us in popularity or social trouble or whatever they come at us with. I'm not talking about being rude. I'm not talking about being cruel. I'm not talking about buying into every conspiracy that flashes in front of you on the socials. I mean just speaking like Trump does, the simple truth. Because from climate hysteria to systemic racism to intersectionality to anti-heteronormativity and all the rest of it, every narrative that comes out of the left is a deceptive, destructive, and immoral falsehood. And at this point, we can never, ever hesitate in a polite, kindly, loving way to tell these human locusts to bugger off to hell where they belong. Trump is obviously a great big guy, and he has great big flaws. But the left doesn't want him dead because of his flaws. They want him dead because of his virtues. And they may get away with it. They may kill him. But they can't kill us all, which means no matter who wins this election, we are all Donald Trump now. But before I get to that, let's talk about Am I Racist? It is the #1 new comedy in America. It's now playing only in theaters. Get tickets and showtimes for your local theaters now at AmIRacist.com. You'll love it. It's hilarious. So many can tell you that there's nothing more annoying than when blinds let in that sliver of light at the crack of dawn. Unless you're a morning person, you don't need that. You don't want to see it. Now there's a better way to buy blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery. It's called 3-Day Blinds. They're the leading manufacturer of custom window treatments in the U.S., and right now they are running a buy one, get one 50% off deal. You can shop for almost anything online these days. Why not shop for blinds too? You know, I'm not the sort of person who even notices these things, but when you change the way your windows look, you change the entire room. It's absolutely true. Whenever my wife does it, I come in and say, "Why does everything look so nice?" And she points me to the windows. It really makes a big difference. 3-Day Blinds. They're great people. They've been in business for over 45 years. They have local, professionally trained design consultants who have an average of 10 plus years of experience. That's why they're the highest rated blinds company on Trustpilot at 4.7 out of 5 stars. Set up an appointment. You'll get a free, no obligation quote the same day. And if you're not very handy, the expert team at 3-Day Blinds handles all the heavy lifting. They design, measure, and install so you can sit back, relax, and leave it to the pros. Right now, you can get 3-Day Blinds, buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery. For a free, no charge, no obligation consultation, just head to 3dayblinds.com/Klavan. That's buy one, get one 50% off when you head to 3dayblinds.com/Klavan. One last time, that's the number 3, DAY blinds.com/ how do you spell it? It's KLAVAN. No E's in Klavan. I just make it look this easy. All right, Chapter 1, How Failure Becomes Lies. Now, there may be some of you who think I went too far in mocking the news media in the opening satire. Let me read you a story in the New York Times after a man sat for 12 hours in a spot on Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach, Florida, in a spot used by paparazzi because it gives them a line of sight to celebrity golfers like Donald Trump, with security arranged by a Secret Service which is now headed by the guy who did the security in Butler, Pennsylvania. And I'm sorry for laughing at this. I have a mordant sense of humor. With the feds, according to Governor Ron DeSantis, now blocking Governor Ron's state investigation into the crime. They won't let him near the scene of the crime. They don't want anybody to find out what's going on. So here's the New York Times story about this, or one of them. This was under analysis, which might as well just be lies. Here we lie. Second apparent assassination attempt on Trump prompts alarm abroad. They changed that headline. It was worse before, but here it is. In the 9 years since Donald J. Trump entered American politics, the global perception of the United States has been shaken by the image of a fractured, unpredictable nation. First one, then a second apparent attempt on the former president's life have accentuated international concerns, raising fears of violent turmoil spiraling towards civil war. Since you're my audience, I know you're smart enough to follow what that just did, right? Blaming Trump for his assassination. Because of Trump, everybody's worried the place is falling apart, and you can tell it is by the fact that people keep trying to shoot him. The threat of violence, at times even the need for it, has been a core part of Mr. Trump's message. He has persistently laced his language with calls to fight. No politician has ever done that before, and used incendiary terms to insult immigrants, Just before the January 6th assault on the Capitol, he urged followers to fight like hell. In general, he has shown an ironclad incapacity to accept many truths, including the result of the 2020 election. Democrats have responded by depicting Mr. Trump as a direct menace to American democracy. They responded, but everything flows out of Trump. They didn't start it. He started it. They just responded. They mentioned January 6th, but they don't mention the George Floyd riots, which the press inspired over an anomalous incident, the death of this drug addict in police custody, which said nothing about America, but they pretended it did, and they ginned up the riots, and then they forgave the riots and said they were mostly peaceful, explained them away. A New York Times reporter, Nicole Hannah-Jones, said, oh, it's not violence because it's just property, despite the fact that 20 people died. It's just property. It's the property. See, she's a millionaire. She's a millionaire. She doesn't care about the property of the little people for whom it's their dreams, their business, their future, everything doesn't matter to her. They mention the hostility toward migrants and illegals, but they don't mention the fact that authorities have allowed these people to swamp in here without our permission, against our laws, against our security. You know, the Wall Street Journal, which unfortunately has become just an awful paper since it's got a new editor-in-chief, it's like Homer Simpson sinking into the ivy. It's just become like all the other left-wing newspapers. They did a front-page story this week saying, no, Donald Trump knew there were no cats being eaten in Springfield, Ohio, but he said it anyway. First of all, I will bet $50 that within a year we will find out that cats were in fact eaten. But I haven't seen anything in the Wall Street Journal about what these high-level Border Patrol whistleblowers are telling Congress, that not only did hundreds of what they call SIAs, special interest aliens, aka possible terrorists, dangerous people, come into the country, but the Biden-Harris administration pressured them to cover that up and everything else. Here's just a quick clip of some of that testimony, cut 12.
We had an exponential increase in significant interest aliens. These are aliens with significant ties to terrorism. Prior to this administration, the San Diego sector averaged 10 to 15 SIA arrests per year. Once word was out the border was far easier to cross, San Diego went to over 100 SIAs in 2022, well over that in 2023, and even more than that registered this year. These are only the ones we caught. At the time, I was told I could not release any information on this increase in SIAs or mention any of the arrests. The administration was trying to convince the public there was no threat at the border.
Just wrap your mind around that for a minute, okay? This is your government, open borders. They've taken off all of the restraints. There was something like 17 people who came in December of the Trump administration. Now we're being flooded with thousands and thousands and thousands, and hundreds of them are suspected terrorists or possible terrorists. And the administration is telling the Border Patrol to keep it quiet. They're flying them out to Texas so that nobody knows they're there. In California, this fellow Hudke was in San Diego, I believe. Think about that. That's a scandal. That's a genuine scandal. That is a career-ending, administration-ending scandal. No one's been fired. No one's been impeached. You can't tell me what they impeached Trump for, but they impeached him twice, but nothing here. And it's not being reported. Dead silence. But, we know that the Haitians aren't eating cats in Springfield, and what a terrible thing that is to say. This is an amazing, amazing thing. I want you to listen for just a minute. This clip is kind of off. Well, it's a little bit of a tangent, but it just shows you how they not only try to silence everybody, and this is why I say we have to become Donald Trump, we have to just ignore this stuff, but it's how they silence their own conscience. It's how they tell themselves their ideology is really more important than doing the right thing. This is a lady named Tricia McLaughlin who worked for Vivek Ramaswamy. She's talking to Abby Phillips on CNN, and she's talking about what's going on in Springfield, Ohio, where 20,000 migrants, these are not illegals, these are 20,000 migrants, were dumped on a city of 60,000 people that is suffering because of the policies of the Biden administration. Listen to what she says, and listen to what Abby Phillips responds.
Keep in mind, this is just failed federal policy. This is a community about 60,000 people. I'm from Ohio, about 30 or 40 minutes from Springfield. This is a community that has a poverty rate of about 20%, very working community. And so federal policy led, while these are illegal migrants, This is 20,000 people coming into a community of 60,000 people being completely overrun. It doesn't matter if they're migrants from Haiti or California. The schools are being overrun. The social services are being overrun. That is poor federal planning.
Just to be clear, I mean, when you use terms like overrun,
yeah,
I think that's actually part of the problem.
Are you freaking kidding me? That's the problem? It's dehumanizing, she says. What about dehumanizing the citizens of the country you're supposed to run? What about dehumanizing the American people? These cities are gutted because of globalization, because they moved manufacturing out, because they wouldn't pay, basically. They wouldn't pay the workers enough, so they moved the manufacturing out and said, oh, well, you'll benefit because things will be cheaper, and essentially turned the Midwest into a Rust Belt. They're dehumanizing these people, but she used the wrong term. That's the wrong term. You used that's insensitive. That's an insensitive term. She's telling you something that's absolutely true, which is all of this, like the homelessness on the city streets. It's federal policy that's causing it. It's also state and local policy that's causing it. It can be gotten rid of by voting in new people, but you use the wrong term. I'm sorry, you used the wrong term. You know, it's really interesting. After this second alleged assassination on the alleged Trump, after the second time this lunatic tries to kill him, another lunatic tries to kill him, and the Secret Service not only does nothing about it, but facilitates it, makes it look easy. I'm not talking about the agents on the ground. I'm talking about the people running the place. They start saying it's rhetoric. Now, we do it. The right says, well, it's your rhetoric. You call him Hitler, you call him this. And the left says, well, his rhetoric is bad too. His rhetoric is bad too. You know, he calls them communists. I mean, yeah, he's telling you the truth, but still, no one can say that Trump goes easy on the rhetoric. It's not about the rhetoric. It's about the actions. It's about the actions. They impeach him twice for nothing. They indict him 90 times for nothing. They do things that have never been done in the history of the country before, trying to bring him down. And then people say, oh, well, they're not bringing him down. I better go kill him. And they say, well, your rhetoric is as bad as ours. Donald Trump refused to prosecute Hillary Clinton when his crowds were shouting, lock her up, because he said it would be too divisive. He said it would be too divisive, but not them. That wasn't a problem. You know, here's the thing. You have to, when your policies fail, you have to find ways to lie about it, right? You have to find ways to silence the people who tell the truth. And that's all they're doing because their policies fail. But the thing is, they don't fail for them. That's the important thing. See, look, let's talk about, I have to go back to some basics here because sometimes we forget the basics. Leftism is the flip side of the coin of fascism, and it's a coin without a center. Leftism is fascism. Why? It's fascism from cradle to grave. What I should say is fascism from abortion to euthanasia, because it's also so thick with death. But the reason leftism is always fascism, and sometimes we get too complex about this, is very basic. It's based on the lie that there is some benign entity that can take control of your life better than you can. Even if they could take control of your life, they're not benign, and it wouldn't be a bad thing. Your money, for instance, is your time. Your time is your life. If they control your money, they control your time, they control your life. If they say, well, your money is here in your hand where you earned it, but it should go there, that's fascism. You're giving this immense power of redistributing wealth, of redistributing jobs, of creating equity, one of Kamala Harris's favorite words, equity, everybody the same. You're giving that power to the government. That's all the power. There is no other power. And the only thing you can do about it is complain, and the only thing they can do is silence you. Socialism is power from the top down. And you think, well, wow, why didn't anyone ever think of that before, except everyone until the United States of America? Leftism doesn't work for you because it enslaves you. And even if they do a great job of taking your money and spending it on something else, it's your money. They're stealing your money. That's all it is. But it works for them because now they have all the money. Now they have all the power. So it works for the people in power, doesn't work for the little people, the people that Dave Chappelle was making reference to, that Donald Trump is speaking for, because they haven't spoken for them, and the Republicans didn't speak for them, and the Democrats obviously are trying to shut them up and silence them. They don't even get to, the poor Democrats don't even get to vote for their own candidate. They just have Kamala Harris smushed on them. They didn't want Biden either. They wanted Bernie, but they got Hillary. They don't have any choice whatsoever, and they want to make sure that's true for the rest of us. So now you got to silence everything, and especially you got to silence people when they start to jab at jab at you and make fun of you and actually make people laugh at you, because that's the worst thing of all. So Gavin Newsom in California, one of the chief fascists, he now wants to ban, has signed a law banning deep fake satires because they make Kamala Harris, they did one that made Kamala Harris look like a stupid, deceptive, fake candidate. Here it is, this deep fake, it just makes her look terrible.
We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Yeah, first of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family, and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that. And there are a number of ways. One is bringing down the cost of everyday necessities, including groceries.
So Newsom has a point. I mean, there's a deep fake. It makes her sound like a complete liar. It makes her sound like an idiot. She doesn't answer any questions. She goes off and, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. That was actually her. That was the Oprah Winfrey show. Sorry about that. I'm sorry. Here's the deep fake one.
I, Kamala Harris, am your Democrat candidate for president because Joe Biden finally exposed his senility at the debate. Thanks, Joe. I was selected because I am the ultimate diversity hire. I'm both a woman and a person of color. So if you criticize anything I say, you're both sexist and racist. I may not know the first thing about running the country, but remember, that's a good thing if you're a deep state puppet. I had 4 years under the tutelage of the ultimate deep state puppet, a wonderful mentor, Joe Biden. Joe taught me rule number 1, carefully hide your total incompetence. I take insignificant things and I discuss them as if they're significant.
Huh. I liked her better in that one. She was at least telling the truth. And you know what? I think that there should be labels on deepfakes, because I don't think it's fair if Taylor Swift endorses Kentucky Fried Chicken. She doesn't want to. I don't think you should be able to use people's faces to say things that they didn't actually say. So you put a little, what they call a bug on it to say this is a deepfake. But I don't think he's going to get away. He's already being sued, and I don't think he's going to get away with silencing it, because we do have this thing. We did have this thing. We're supposed to have this thing called free speech in the First Amendment, but it's got to die. It has got to stop, because their failures are failures for us, but successes for them. Here's a very brief montage put together by a video maker named Western Lensman. That's what he calls himself on X. He put together a montage of Kamala, her vice president candidate Tim Walz, and Hillary Clinton. These are all fairly recent.
We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms, because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy. And if you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
I love the fact that Hillary Clinton is saying this, or the person who put the Steele dossier, complete fake dossier, in the hands of the FBI and started a 2+ year investigation into Russian collusion that never happened. I just want to flash back for a minute to one of the truly great television shows of the great age of television, the series Chernobyl, which was HBO. And you can still get it on Max or HBO, wherever you get these things. It's obviously about the disaster at Chernobyl during the Gorbachev years in the Soviet Union. The irradiated cloud of death is spewing out of this completely exploded nuclear reactor, just spewing death, birds falling out of the sky, people seared, burned to death as they stand there. And there's a city right nearby, and all the Soviet officials get together and discuss, what are we going to do about this? If people will panic, if they hear this, they can't stop it, and there's just death coming out, death is coming out. And the people who are running the place, they don't want to be blamed. And so they're telling people, we shouldn't panic. We've got this under control, when they don't. It's completely out of control. And then the old socialist gets up, the guy who was there for the revolution. He gets up and he makes an inspiring speech. And before I show you this speech, I just want to remind you, we on the right saw Chernobyl and we laughed because it was written by a lefty and he didn't even realize he was dissecting communism. He was showing what was so wrong about communism. But it's not really just communism. It's anything that fails and people don't want to take the blame and they're in comfortable positions of power. The failure has not damaged their position of power. They're just where they want to be, but it has damaged everybody else around them. And it's not that they have no conscience. It's just who's going to grab the hot potato of guilt. So they're all discussing what we should do with these people who are sitting ducks in a city about to be covered by a cloud of death. And the old socialist gets up to rouse them and remind them who they are. And this is the speech that he makes that wins him applause.
That our faith in Soviet socialism will always be rewarded. Now, the state tells us the situation here is not dangerous. Have faith, comrades. The state tells us it wants to prevent a panic. Listen well. It's true. When the people see the police, they will be afraid. But it is my experience that when the people ask questions that are not in their own best interest, they should simply be told to keep their minds on their labor and leave matters of the state to the state. We seal off the city. No one leaves. And cut the phone lines. Contain the spread of misinformation.
That's why they hate Trump. That's why they want him dead, because he spreads misinformation, which is just another word for the truth. The average Joe does not eat half of the recommended serving sizes of fruits and vegetables in a day. And the reason I look this great, I know you're wondering, how does he look like that? It's because I've been informed on the importance of making sure I'm staying on top of my health in my middle to young years. With Balance of Nature fruits and veggies, there's never been a more convenient dietary supplement to ensure you get a wide variety of fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. Imagine trying to eat 31 different fruits and vegetables every day. You have to talk like this. It would be miserable and time-consuming. But Balance of Nature provides an on-the-go solution by taking 31 different fruits and vegetables, freeze-drying them, turning them into a powder, and then putting them into a capsule. You can't get more convenient than that. Go to balanceofnature.com and use promo code Klavan for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Klavan. How? Oh, how? Please tell me, how do you spell Klavan? Let's hear it. It's Klavan.
There are no easy things.
Chapter 2, Date 'em like you hate 'em. It really is a question of censorship on the one hand, because things have gotten out of their control. The media, because of the internet, has gotten out of their control. But it's also what the media tells you and what they should give you to focus on. They're distracting you. Now, there's a scandal taking place in North Carolina, and it's a genuine story. I'm not going to pretend it's not a story. This is Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who's running for governor. Trump has endorsed him, so it hurts Trump if he gets hit. He's a very, very loud, we had him on the show once, very impressive and aggressive, anti-gay, anti-person. And CNN basically does a deep dive and finds out that 10 years ago, he was on a weird porn site where he seems to have liked some stuff, or said he did, and made comments like, oh, I'm a black Nazi, really weird comments. And they've traced the email that he left there to another email that he had. So, okay, if it's true, they got him. Here's Robinson's reaction to this.
Folks, this race right now, our opponents are desperate to shift the focus here from the substantive issues and focus on what you are concerned with to salacious tabloid trash. We cannot allow that to happen. And folks, we've seen this type of stuff in the past as well. Clarence Thomas famously once said he was the victim of a high-tech lynching. Well, it looks like Mark Robinson is too, by a man who refuses to stand on stage and debate me about the real issues that face you.
I got to admit, that's not the most convincing denial I ever heard. The thing about Clarence Thomas was he was innocent, and even the things they were charging him with were nothing. And this, look, he's on a porn site. It's not exactly hurting anybody, but it does make him a hypocrite. So it's all right. It's a story. No question it's a story. But it's got to be hard to trace a guy's porn use 10 years ago. How do you even get that? How do you find that? You've got to put some time into that. CNN put some time into that. That's really interesting. They put some time into that, but nothing about these guys on the border saying that the information that they were letting terrorists in because of the policies of the federal government were being suppressed. I'm just saying. And then even this Sean Diddy story, I mean, Diddy, obviously the rapper, he was into some sick stuff where he had these freak-offs where he forced women into these situations. He put them on drugs and he forced them into these situations where they were being abused by male prostitutes while he pleasured himself watching all this. And he has been put in prison, in the same prison in Brooklyn, I think it is, that Jeffrey Epstein was put in. And the feds raided the place and they found guns with the serial numbers taken off and videos and all this SM stuff and 1,000 bottles of lubricant and so on and so forth. But this has been going on for over a decade, right? Probably more. His old girlfriend, her name was Cassie Ventura, sued him over controlling violence. There is a surveillance video from 2016 where she's trying to escape from his hotel room and he comes out and beats the living crap out of her. It was genuinely hard to watch, kicks her, drags her back. It's very upsetting footage. So the question then about this one is, like, what took them so long? And here is the federal prosecutor, Damian Williams, getting that question from the press.
The indictment describes aggressive, open, violent, hedonistic abuse that you say was recurrent and widely known. Why did it take law enforcement so long to intervene? How many women were victimized by Sean Combs and how many others were involved?
Look, our investigation is ongoing. We are committed to bringing justice to everyone who's been victimized by the defendant. I can't tell you why it took so long. I think the better focus is on the fact that we are here today. And we are committed to making sure that justice is done.
That's the better focus for him. Next question. Indeed, that's the better focus for him. But I don't know if that's the better question. I would like to know why this took. I mean, people have been complaining about this very loudly. The other rapper, 50 Cent, I think after the Biden-Harris administration, he calls himself $4, but he's been talking about it. Eminem accused Diddy of being involved in the murder of Notorious B.I.G. That was that rap song I was quoting was a Notorious B.I.G. song, but Diddy was on the album and he's credited with, he has a writing credit on the song. So, it was basically a confession to everything he was charged with. Charlemagne the God is on his show, The Breakfast Show, The Breakfast Club, talking about the fact that anybody who's been near him, they're talking about conspiracy, that all these people are going to be, rounded up. But I just want to know, isn't this in some ways another cover-up of a situation in our country, maybe throughout the West, but certainly in our country, that is just being buried. And every time we bring it up, it's like a right-wing conspiracy. They put out that show, The Sound of Freedom, about trafficking children, and they've done nothing but attack it because Jim Caviezel believes in QAnon. Well, QAnon, the reason I invented Klavan is because QAnon may be crazy, but it's based on a basic truth, which is this: the sexual abuse of young people and women and boys by the powerful in this country is like something out of the Arabian Nights. It is beyond obscene. And look, this is the press. George Stephanopoulos covered this up for Bill Clinton. That was his job, and he was rewarded for that job by getting a top news job at ABC News, despite the fact that he had no journalistic skills whatsoever except covering up sexual abuse by Bill Clinton. ABC killed the Epstein story while Hillary was running under George Stephanopoulos' watch, and that was revealed on the leaked Amy Robach tape. NBC covered up Ronan Farrow's Weinstein story. Ronan Farrow had everything on Harvey Weinstein, all the rapes, all the abuse, and they covered that up. They killed that story while at the same time they were covering up for their anchorman, Matt Lauer, who was alleged to have assaulted one young woman at the station so forcibly that she fainted. He was supposed to have alleged to have anally raped another woman so that she bled for days afterward. CBS, when they found out that someone was working for them who they thought leaked the Amy Robach tape, they fired her to keep the cover-up going. They were covering up for the cover-up. And yet Donald Trump is supposed to pay over $80 million to this loon, E. Jean Carroll, after a statute of limitations was suspended specifically to get him in a case that the jury was unclear about, where Carroll's charges, she didn't even know what year it took place. She said she was wearing a dress that wasn't invented at the time she was talking about. No Jeffrey Epstein's customers have been exposed. I mean, I'm just saying, it's not that I think that, Mark Robinson is innocent. And it's not that I think if he did it, he's a hypocrite and he should step down. I think he should step down just to keep things clear. But aren't we being distracted when a scandal of the size of the border is being covered up by our government? Is that not? To me, that makes Watergate look like nothing. It makes Watergate look like nothing. They're letting terrorists in and telling the Border Patrol not to tell anybody. The big lie here is about feminism, too, of course, which I love to attack because it's such a bad mistake. Sexual liberation. Let's add that, sexual liberation. The lies that women don't need protective men, that they can go to kickboxing class and fend for themselves, that if I say I'm a woman, there's no problem in my using a woman's spaces, a woman's bathroom or a woman's locker room. What a terrible sexist I am for thinking that mothers should be cherished, that ladyhood should be a thing, that being a gentleman should be a thing, that being a homemaker should be one of the most elevated positions in our society. To think that a nation should be judged, and I do think this, I will tell you this right now, I think that a nation should be judged on the way it treats its women, because there's a lot for a nation to gain by enslaving them. There's a lot for a nation to gain materially by enslaving them, so a nation should be judged on how it treats its women, and we treat our women in our country like garbage unless they act like men. We treat our women we misuse our women for being women. We think they can be replaced by men. It took them this long for the powers that be to put hands on Diddy because the powers that be are Diddy. And this is another lie that's being buried, and I don't care if they call it QAnon, I don't care what they call it, we have to say it out loud. I love me some bean powder. It really will put you to sleep. And I know many of you are frustrated with tossing and turning all night. That's my usual thing. But when sleep seems elusive, it can actually be physically and mentally draining. I love Beam. It's not just your run-of-the-mill sleep aid. It's a concoction carefully crafted to help you slip into the sweet embrace of rest. I love that. Just float into the sweet embrace of rest, and you don't have the grogginess that often accompanies other sleep remedies when you wake up. Beam Dream contains a powerful, all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, apigenin, and melatonin to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. Today, my listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, their best-selling hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. Now available in delicious flavors like cinnamon cocoa, chocolate peanut butter, and mint chip. Better sleep has never tasted better. I've tasted them all. They are very, very good. Just mix Beam Dream into hot water or milk and enjoy before bedtime. If you find yourself battling the bedtime blues, give it a shot. You will like it. Your weary self will thank you. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, take advantage of 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Klavan with my promo code Klavan for up to 40% off your order. Now you know how to spell Beam. You knew how to spell Beam, but you don't know how to spell Klavan. You've never heard it before. It's Klavan. Chapter 3, Paging Hezbollah. Now, I usually, in my opening satire, I made some jokes about that. I usually don't make jokes about things where people die. And I know there was collateral damage to this operation. War is a terrible, terrible thing. I would like there never to be wars. Iran should not have started this war, but Israel should finish it. That's the way I feel about it. So they blew up their pagers. They blew up their walkie-talkies. This is an amazing event. I mean, our friend Mike Duran, who we did an interview with from the Hudson Institute, he put up a tweet that the last I saw, an ex-post, the last I saw it had gotten something like 5 million hits, where he just explains the incredible depth of proficiency and expertise the Israelis had to do this. They had to get into the supply chain so that they sold them the pagers and the walkie-talkies. They had to install, next-gen bombs in these things so they couldn't be detected, so they wouldn't make the thing not work, but they could be blown up from far away. And this killed, a large number of people, but the thing was, it wounded thousands of these guys. And that's even better because then they have to be treated. Just talking about war, and I know that's cruel, but it's just war is cruel. So they have to be treated, and that's going to use more resources. And all we hear from AOC, and we hear from the Jew haters on the right and the Jew haters on the left. I mean, that has no politics. That, this is so sad, this is so terrible. But you know what? This is actually a good thing, because what these Iranians do, these Iranian proxies do, is they hide behind citizens. They want their own citizens to be killed because they know the useful idiots in America will go, oh, how sad, the Jew haters, oh, how sad. So they hide, they are sending their people, innocents, out to be killed because they know it gets them sympathy, and they does not care. They do not care one bit. And so what the Israelis did was they kind of circumvented that situation. They blew up these guys. And of course, they're sending out, the terrorists are sending out all these, things saying, oh, everyone who was killed was a child. Every single one was a baby. They weren't. That's a lie, obviously. So this is another situation where we have to look at the truth about these things, because we're getting this on the right and the left. We're getting the isolationism on the right. America first means we shouldn't get involved in anything, and anybody who's ever recommended going to war is a bad guy, and it's all a scam. And then, of course, on the left, it's like we're the bad guys. And the people, remember, again, there is no Hamas. There is no Hezbollah. There's only Iran. They're all working for Iran. They're all being used by Iran. They're all acting at the behest of Iran. The people who chant death to Israel, death to America, and their supreme leader says, I hope these prayers are carried up to Allah. These are the people we're fighting. These are the people the Jews are fighting. They're out there fighting in front of us. And if the people in Europe who are also kind of leaving Israel in the lurch, if they think they're the hors d'oeuvre, we're the main course, but Israel is the appetizer, and the rest of them are just like the salad, and then they're coming for us. These people hate us. And this is a dangerous moment. This is a dangerous moment. This is a bipartisan report that Walter Russell Mead pointed to in the Wall Street Journal. So I looked up the report and I read it. This is a Commission on National Defense Strategy, and this is both Republicans and Democrats appoint these guys. And they have put out a report saying the threats to the United States are the most serious and most challenging the nation has encountered since 1945, and could include the potential for near-term major war. They're talking about World War III. The nation was last prepared for such a fight during the Cold War, which ended 35 years ago. It's not prepared today. China and Russia are major powers that seek to undermine U.S. influence. The United States China is outpacing the United States and has largely negated the U.S. military advantage in the Western Pacific. This is the world that we're in. There is no ignoring it. We do have to have these fights, and if we can fight them without sending our guys into them, because Israel doesn't want us to send our guys into them, that is all for the better. And I say this, I know it's frustrating to Ben because he talks about this, and people say, well, he's a Jew and he loves Israel. Well, he is a Jew and he loves Israel, but he's also just talking blunt common sense here. When I became a Christian, I thought I had to give up the privilege of calling myself a Jew. I didn't want to insult Jews by calling myself a Jew when I became a Christian. But now the anti-Semites are honoring me by saying, well, you're still a Jew, and I'm never one to refuse a compliment. But whether I'm a Jew or a Christian, I know a just war when I see one. This is an important war for us to support, and the Biden-Harris administration has it exactly wrong. They keep saying de-escalate, de-escalate. No, they got to escalate until they win. And they're going to do it. They're now bombing Hezbollah. They apparently dropped one bomb and wiped out their entire leadership. So they are on the warpath. They should be on the warpath. And what they really need is for Donald Trump to be in the White House again and help them see this all the way home. You have got to prioritize your health. And it's not easy when you're not sure where to start. That's why I want to tell you about Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning to know what's going on with your metabolism, meaning whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Once that's been determined, the app gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. Forget one-size-fits-all diet fads. What sets Lumen apart is its ability to understand you on a personal level. It's really good. You know, I work out all the time, but you want to know what to work out for and what to eat. You don't have to stress with Lumen about what you should be eating in the morning. After I take those little occasional trips to the refrigerator in the middle of the night, I want to know where I stand. Lumen's ability to craft a personalized nutrition plan for each day tailored to my body's needs and goals is revolutionary. With Lumen, you're not just getting a device, you're getting a health companion. Breathe into it before and after a workout or a meal and gain real-time insights into your body's metabolic response. If you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Klavan to get 15% off your Lumen. That is LUMEN.me/KLAVAN, no E's, for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for being a sponsor on this episode. Final chapter, The Biggest Lie. So I was talking about how they transform every issue into issues of sensitivity and language instead of, for instance, truth, right? You want to get at the truth. And the truth is that there are trade-offs for everything. Everything comes at a price, and what they should be talking about is this is going to help this, but it's going to hurt this, and those are the ways you make decisions. But instead what they're doing is they're saying you're not being nice. And the worst example of this week came from Pope Francis. He was in, I think, Singapore. He was talking to an interreligious meeting with young people. And he was talking to them, and this is a quote from the transcript. One of the things that has impressed me, he says, is the interfaith dialogue. It's very important, he says, because if you start arguing, this is the Pope talking, if you start arguing my religion is more important than yours, or mine is the true one, yours is not true, where does this lead? And somebody shouts out the answer, a young person says, it leads to destruction. And the Pope says, that is correct. All religions are paths to God. I will use an analogy. They are like different languages that express the divine. And David French wrote an op-ed in the Times saying Pope Francis wasn't watering down the Christian faith. He was expressing existential humility. He was unwilling to state definitively the mind of God and to pass judgment on the souls of others. That's the kind of logic that, I think has gotten into David's head working at the New York Times. It's like a sort of a miasma that pollutes your brain. Because I wonder why the martyrs died. The early Christian martyrs died rather than pay tribute to the god Caesar if every religion is a path to God, right? You don't want to kill people over these things. I don't want to fight or hurt or hate people. But if you don't want to argue about them at all, if you don't want to discuss them, then it must be because they don't matter. It must be because they're not real. This is the joke between Ben and me about the Treaty of Westphalia. When you say don't fight about these other things, you're sort of saying they're not real, they don't really matter, so why talk about them at all? Now, listen, I believe that people of different religions can find their way to God, but I believe that if they do, the God they find is going to look exactly like Jesus Christ, okay? And I'm serious about that. I believe it's from Matthew 25 that there are people who can serve Christ without knowing it, and they will be a credit for Christ will welcome them. He'll say, you fed me and you clothed me, and they'll say, when? We didn't even know you. And he'll say, don't worry, when you did it to that beggar on the street, when you did it to that guy who was, being beaten up or whatever, then when you did it to the least of people, you were doing it to me. So you're good. I believe that. But it's always going to come down to Jesus Christ. And I believe that that process doesn't end when you die. I don't think it's a game show. I think if you're on the right trajectory, this is what I don't know. Obviously I'm just talking from what I've read in the Bible and working it out for myself, but I do believe that the trajectory continues after death. If you're on the good trajectory, I don't think, your time's up and it's done. I could be wrong. Listen, take my advice. Jesus told the Samaritan woman, the Jews are in a good situation because they know who they worship. You worship what you do not know. It is better to worship what you know, which is why I think we should support our religion. So interfaith discussion doesn't have to be belligerent, just like politics doesn't have to be belligerent, but you do have to speak the truth fearlessly in the same way that Donald Trump spoke it when he talked about the system being rigged. So there's an article in First Things, which is a very fine Catholic-leaning journal that I subscribe to, one of the two journals that I subscribe to. And Oren Cass, who's a very intelligent commentator, takes issues with conservatives who say we need to return to God to be free. He uses Josh Hawley as an example. Hawley says, America as we know it cannot survive without biblical Christianity. The rights we cherish, the freedoms we enjoy, the ideals we love together, all are rooted in and sustained by the tradition of the Bible. Christianity is the electric current of our national life. Turn it off and the light will fade. And Cass, like many, many, many conservatives, says no. He says the problem is that this view no longer fits the national character. We live in an era in which faith has fallen out of fashion. I don't suppose that is an especially controversial statement, but then he gives all the data showing that Americans no longer go to church and no longer believes. And Cass goes on, he says, and he's a good guy. He was on the show too. You know, he's not being malevolent. He's giving his opinion. He says, on the social issues, conservatives have lost repeatedly and decisively as a religious argument based in Christian morality won in American politics in the past 50 years. I cannot think of one instance. We should understand religion not as the moral foundation upon which the nation's culture and morality are constructed, but as the form into which many ideas and much experience were poured, shaping them and holding them upright. In other words, the religion doesn't generate the morals. It holds the morals in a shape. It's kind of like a fiction that is selling the morals, like reading a novel that tells you what the morals are, but the morals aren't coming from God. Now, I have to tell you something. I've tried to build a moral system without God for 35 years, and I did it with all my mind and all my heart, and I tried very, very hard, and when I couldn't, I was absolutely certain that it could not be done, that you cannot build a moral system without God. Now, Cass goes on to say this. He says he doesn't believe that people have lost their faith because of scientism, the belief that science explains everything, that everything's material and can be explained by science. He believes it's because the meritocracy elevates reason over every other quality, and faith is not about reason. He says the modern meritocracy selects for those who are relatively more adept at reasoning and especially adept at getting their way through reason. This aptitude makes them hostile to faith, which might disrupt their monopoly on truth. But the fact is, it's scientism that has made people like Orrin Cass believe that reason and faith are at odds, which they aren't, right? It's an illusion that reason and faith are at odds, or that science and faith are at odds, which is why I want to point you to what I think is a groundbreaking article, one of the best articles I have read in the last several years, maybe even in a decade. And unfortunately, it is by my son, Spencer Klavan, no relation. And I say unfortunately because I feel a little bit like Ben defending Israel, and everybody says, of course you're defending Israel. You're a Jew who loves Israel. And you're going to say, well, this guy with a name like Klavan is probably related to you. And, you know, it's not true. Obviously, we're not related. However, this kid is brilliant. The fact that the Ivy Leagues aren't fighting for him to be a professor there. This is a guy with a Yale undergraduate degree and an Oxford postdoctorate in classics. It's a brilliant guy, and he wrote in the Claremont Review of Books, which is the only other journal that I subscribe to, a review of the trilogy, The Three-Body Problem, which is a Chinese science fiction bestseller that was obviously made into a Netflix show by a guy named Liu Shaoxin, and who is obviously also quite a brilliant man. And Spencer writes about the fact that the novel is about a glitch in Newtonian physics, okay? This is not that hard to understand. Using what we know in Newtonian physics, we can predict the trajectories and the reactions of any two objects in space, like the Earth and the Sun. We know the effect that the Earth is going to have on the Sun and the Sun is going to have on the Earth, and how it's going to make them move and what they're going to do to one another. And we can predict their effects using the math from Newton. But if you add a third object, it becomes impossible, and it seems random, it becomes impossible to predict what they will do, okay? That's the three-body problem, and that, if you've seen the Netflix show, I read the first book in the trilogy, and I saw the show, that's the problem that they're facing. How do we keep a civilization going when we never know what's going to happen next? The sun could burn up everything, or we could suddenly have an ice age, or everybody could be killed. How do we figure out to keep a society alive when you cannot predict what's going on? And what Spencer points out, something about the author of The Three-Body Problem, this guy Liu, he's not openly religious. He may not be religious at all, but like Nietzsche, He simply understands what happens when you remove religion, which is that the ability of the human mind to make sense of the world disappears beyond what we were evolved to do. We were evolved, if you believe wholly in evolution, no God, we were evolved to understand the savannah. And we can understand things for a while, but once they get too big or too small, they stop making sense to us because our mind is just randomly evolved to understand our situation, but not the real situation. Spencer writes, the scientific enterprise that gave us rockets and nuclear power was fueled at its outset by the belief that whatever we found among the stars would gel with what we had learned on Earth. Absent that belief, there's no reason to expect that the furthest reaches of the universe will answer to the postulates of human minds. In other words, science was invented in the Christian world because the Christian world believed that we were made in God's image and his sense was going to be discernible by our sense. And what is happening now is we've reached a moment when quantum physics, very small things, and three-body problems, very large things, don't make sense to us. And if we don't have the faith that we can understand all these things because we are made in the image of God, we can't move forward. Science will simply cease. And Spencer concludes, perhaps the only situation to this problem is the one Liu finds hardest to countenance. Perhaps the only way out of the dark forest is the one illuminated by the belief that led us up to this point. That belief that we are not merely haphazard brains coughed up by evolution, but souls shaped to know the universe and its creator. That belief wasn't a result of experimental investigation. It was the inspiration that prompted us to experiment in the first place. So, in other words, it's not just the social order that requires faith, it's order itself, it's sense, logic, science itself. And they tell you, oh, follow the science, not the religion. There is no science after a while without religion. Without religion, things will stop making sense. You know, this is about science, and most of us don't understand the details of quantum science and three-body problems and all this, but all of us do understand that there's a logical breakdown for ordinary people too, which is called theodicy. It's the breakdown when we try to understand why there is suffering and evil in a world made by an omniscient, all-powerful, good God. We find it hard to understand. So Bill Maher was talking to Jordan Peterson about this. It was kind of like being in one of Jordan Peterson's clinical sessions. And this is what Maher said about this, that this idea that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people is simply ridiculous. Here's what Maher said.
When people connect their behavior with some sort of punishment or reward, that's childish. That's when people go karma. I did a whole thing on this on my show once. What a bunch of bullshit karma. Americans interpret karma to mean like, you took the last parking spot and now shit's going to happen to you. That's Schadenfreude. That's not karma. But that's how people think of it. Karma. Oh, yeah, it's going to come back and get you. No, I'm sorry.
Weaponized karma.
Weaponized karma. No, life is random. Good people get punished for no reason, and bad people go unpunished.
Now, Maher I respect what he's saying here, but he's using the wrong word, right? He's not quite right. At the human level, the world is not random. It's unjust. It's not random at all. If you eat a lot of cake, you'll get fat. If you don't work out, you'll get flabby. If you cheat and lie and steal, you'll become one kind of person. And if you're kind and moral and loving, you'll become another kind of person. These things just follow as the night follows the day. But to Maher's point, you can do good and get hit by a car or cancer, or get unfairly treated by powerful people and put in prison. So the question then becomes, will the fact that those good or bad actions don't save you from injustice and suffering, human or natural, does that make the goodness worthless? That's the question that you're really answering. If it does make it worthless, if the goodness is worthless, you should just do whatever you want, whatever helps you survive. You should lie when you can get away with it. You should cheat. You should rape. You could kill if you can get away with it. Whatever you want to do, you should do. And if you lie and lie and lie, if nothing else, you get a job in the news media. But if not, if your goodness has an intrinsic worth, if it does something to the inside of you and shapes your soul in such a way that it elevates your life even when you are suffering, even if you are suffering injustice, illness, death, grief, sorrow, still, if that moral action gives you something of worth, then you have to begin to ask yourself, where does that intrinsic worth of goodness come from? If it doesn't come from rewards and punishments, which it doesn't, Mara's right, why is goodness worth it even if you suffer? And how is it that deep down, all of us actually understand the beauty of goodness, even in a world of evil when we see it? You can move people with it instantaneously, even if they're evil themselves. And if you follow that train of thought that there's an inherent goodness that doesn't stop you from suffering in the world, you begin to understand the God who gives that goodness its worth. It's the only way you can get to that understanding. And once you think about that long enough, you start to realize that a God who walked into the world would be crucified by that world, that's the whole point. But that God would live forever even so. The truth would be destroyed, but the truth would never die. There's only one religion that teaches that, not as a myth, but as a historical fact. And just as we need that religion to understand the physical universe, we actually can't do science without it. We also need it to understand the moral universe as well. And on that too, we should not remain silent. The number one new comedy in America is Am I Racist? And the only way to see it is in theaters. We've already claimed the number 4 spot at the box office. That is absolutely amazing. The audience has spoken with a massive 98% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Am I Racist is officially verified hot. The reviews are rolling in from everyone, everywhere. Joe Rogan says it's laugh out loud hilarious. American Thinker calls it a brilliant, hysterical expose of the race hustling industry. The Wall Street Journal only needed one word to describe the movie: hilarious. Don't miss your chance to see the number one new comedy in America. Head to AmIRacist.com for tickets and showtimes near you right now. All right, we went long today, and so with the members' permission, I'm going to let everybody into the member block today, and there's a reason for this, is that last week I asked you to send in answers to what is happening in the dating world, because I'm obviously way past dating age and way past the dating game, and I'm hearing from a lot of incredibly lovely women, both physically and personally, that you can't find a husband. And I'm hearing this from a lot of different places, and I've been hearing it for quite a long time. And so I asked any young people to write in and tell me what they think is going on. And so we were swamped with letters, and I can't read them all. Most of them were from men, but not all of them. So I'll read more from men than from women. But I wanted to read them, answer them. And since I'm out of time, I don't want to lock people out. But this is all the more reason to become a member today. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. I'm letting everybody into this, so pay back by becoming a member today. And now we will do for everybody Klavan Klapbacks.
Paging Hezbollah. Hezbollah, you have a telephone call at the front desk.
Weird. That's cruel. You're cruel. Do you hear me making jokes about that? Oh, you did. Never mind. All right. So here is one from Landon, who is obviously a guy. He says, the problem from my perspective is that we Gen Zers were never actually told what is the proper way to talk or to meet people. That could be overcome, but there is a feeling that the risks are very high. The Me Too stuff is not a recent development. Men, and myself included, are terrified of being arrested or worse because we wanted a beautiful woman to know our romantic intentions. People are reporting fewer and fewer friendships because in my case and many others, we have no idea how to actually just strike up a conversation with people and then translate that into doing anything afterwards, eventually building a friendship. So I can understand that, and I can understand how the internet would separate people, but I have to point out to something I found, I think about in all of these letters, or many of them, that some of these problems are simply problems of behavior. Right? They're not problems that are inherent. It's not like the girls are all locked up in a room and nobody has the key. It's like that you have this problem because you're on the internet with interacting with people. And that's a problem that can be overcome. And it does seem to me that this central relationship, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to hear from women about this. You have a responsibility to have children. You have a responsibility to get married. You can't just sit around and go, people say to me, why didn't you, fight for Ron DeSantis more? This was not my job to fight for Ron DeSantis. This is my job to give you information and opinions, but it's not my job to fight for anybody. But it is your job to keep the society going. You got a lot from just being alive. You should build more life. It's the only solution to anything is more life. All right. So I'm just saying there's responsibility on both points. Jared, I'm 34 and a single man. I think the biggest difference between then and now is that decades ago when roller discos and more in-person shindigs were happening, people interacted physically and men and women could meet and interact in one place for an extended time and move forward from there. Now people are trying to meet online, a total stranger, and hoping that person is the one. I personally want a cute woman with dreams of a family, but she's also healthy and mentally strong. Does that woman exist? Yes, but do I fall into her desire? Only one way to find out, and that's to meet in person. Well, this is I hear a lot of, and I hear also about church that guys don't go to church before they're married. I think that's kind of true. So when you have a family, you start to realize, oh yeah, this is something I got to take care of, and guys go back to church. And I think that it is true that women show up at church and there are no guys there, and so that is a problem. I think this thing of not having meeting places. One of the reasons that many smart women have said, get married and find your guy in college because that's where you're going to be, because it's more important than your career. The kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, Butker, he was right. It's more important than for a woman especially to create life, to nurture life, to bring children into the world and to make them human beings. It is the noblest profession. And the funny thing about being someone's mom, you're the only person who can do it. It's not only the most essential chore, you are unique in your capacity to do it. It's amazing. Other people can stand in, but they can't do it as well. So it's like, it really is a unique honor and privilege and responsibility. That is a problem you got to solve. Didier, I'm an 18-year-old who is still in secondary school. I haven't really started to get involved in the dating scene, but I have observed that pornography has really poisoned not only relationships between men and women, but the minds of young men. One example of this is that when I spoke to a few friends of mine, the conversation came around dating. One of the friends who has a girlfriend said he still uses pornography. Even so, this is another thing that we got a lot of letters about pornography, and it's a real thing, especially for guys. They see it really early, and like most drugs, if you start it early, it's all the harder to get out of. And I have to say about pornography, this is a scourge, and it is a sin in the real meaning of sin, which is to miss the target. Spencer, Klavan, and I are talking about the No Relation, are talking about this at the New Jerusalem, our Substack, where we talk about faith every day. And we're talking about the fact that I've put forward, and Spencer has learned, that the do not rules, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, those things are not like, don't do that because you're naughty. They're there to get those things out of the way. They're boulders to get you out of the way of a full and developed life and a life of the soul, right? It's not that everything is negative, that all the rules are negative. It's that those negative things get you to the positive place you want to be, which is not a good little boy, rewarded with heaven. It is a full human being able to have full relationships and develop your soul, which is a real thing. So, watching pornography, I know it feels easy, and I've done it, and I'm not being holier than thou. I stopped doing it after a while. Even the mild stuff that I was looking at, I stopped looking at because I just thought, this is getting in my way of full human development, and it just is. And so I just don't. And that's why you do it. You don't do it because it's naughty. You don't do it because it's bad. You don't do it because of this Bible verse or that Bible verse. You do it because it helps you to develop a soul. And one of the ways you know you have a soul is when you fall in love with somebody and you commit your life to them. That will incredibly take you to a next level. It's like putting on the other side of the 3D glasses. Suddenly you realize the world has a dimension that you didn't know it had. Jeremy says, dating has been a nightmare for myself through the years. You have discussed marriage as an ultimate good, and I agree with you. Unfortunately, the feminist movement has destroyed all viable prospects of finding a woman of substance that shares my values. Is somewhat local and has a measure of compatibility. At one time, I was once associated with 23 different dating sites. Most of the women were the same. Either they were insanely liberal to self-absorbed or out of my league. I do not have unrealistic expectations about this, but every date I've ever been on has been a disaster. Well, okay, I'll buy that, but I also think if every date you've been on has been a disaster, you ought to look in the mirror and find out why that is. By the way, out of your league, bad thought. I mean, I'm married to a woman so far out of my league that if she ever finds out, the whole thing is off. I've convinced her, I've browbeat her into thinking that I'm actually worthy of her, but no, And I mean, one of the things about her is she was not just model level gorgeous when I picked her up hitchhiking. She was also incredibly tall, as tall as I was, and a lot of guys get intimidated by that and think, oh, I can't do that. If you assume that other people are intimidated, and you go in, then you may be the only person there. It's a big advantage. She still hasn't found out about this, by the way. Steve says, I'm a single man in my late 20s, living in the suburbs of a pretty liberal city, trying like hell to date with little success. One reason guys might not approach a woman is that, like wolves, women tend to run in packs at social events or out on a Friday night. It's a daunting task for any guy to approach a pretty woman already, but doing so to a group of pretty women seems unfair. I'm sorry. Smallest violin. You think this didn't happen to the rest of us? You think this didn't have that women move in packs? That's absolutely right. And plucking that one woman out, the one you want from all the other women, tough to do. You got to do it. I'll tell you something else. She might turn you down. That's really scary. This is something that we men have to deal with. It's one of the tasks we're given. Let me step over to a woman, because we only have a few. Athena, so it's the actual goddess of wisdom, so that's pretty good. Recently graduated from a very liberal university, believe that much of the low supply of good husbands results from the fact that today's young men lack one of the most important things that a man can have, a sense of duty. One of the best traits that men have is the way that they puff up and rise to the occasion when women need them. However, these young men have grown up in a culture that teaches them that women do not need them. I've heard this before too, and I think this is true. This change is rooted in materialism. A woman's success is judged today by the standards of what masculinity uniquely creates, which is the material world, rather than the standards of what femininity uniquely creates, the immaterial world. Thankfully, I evaded these men by attending college Republicans and marrying its president. That's how you get to be the goddess of wisdom, folks. That is the way you do that. You outsmart people, because this is really an important lesson here. Obviously, we're talking to Athena. You're going to get an important lesson that there are these problems. There are always problems. There used to be civilizations that were set up to, women would have coming out parties, there would be tea parties, there would be proms, there would be all these things that were meant to introduce the high-class women to the high-class men and the next-class women to the next-class men, and so get people together. Even arranged marriages were part of that. All of that has fallen apart, and feminism has made things worse, and the media has made things worse, and the internet has made things even more complicated. But you don't have to surrender to that culture. You can make your own culture. You can make your own luck. You can go out and look for things. You got to have courage. You got to have determination. You got to be like Athena here, who just did the right thing. You just do the smart thing, and you got to do it fast. This is the other thing. You got to act, because time is short. 15 minutes from now, you're going to be my age, and you're not going to be happy if you're childless. You're not going to be happy if you're unmarried. You will be happiest with a family. It is the core part of life. It is the thing we are made for. It is what makes us a complete soul. It is the sign that you're a complete soul. I know that there are some people who never get there, and that's really, really sad, but I don't want you to be one of them. So we'll do some more of this. We'll try and do some more of this as we go along. Really interesting subject, but I got to stop there. It is time for Klavanlessness to descend like a black curtain over all of us. It's almost like the play of life itself is ending, never to begin again until our interview on Wednesday with John Yoo, the famous lawyer, and back on Friday with the Andrew Klavan Show. I'm Andrew Klavan.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up, I never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me.
Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey.
If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover.
They gonna say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you in this field.
Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
I want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument.
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah, this country is a piece of
white
folks,
white
trash, white supremacy, white woman, white boy.
Is there a black person around here?
What's a black person right here? Does he not exist?
They gonna say I'm racist.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Matt.
I just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never be too careful.
They gonna say you racist.
In theaters now, rated PG-13.